Hi, I'm Laura. Welcome to our polytunnel. This belongs to my husband and I. He is a professional gardener, he does it as a day job. I sit behind a desk. I have no business being here within these four walls, but I am joining him on the journey to learn a bit more about plants, about being outdoors and growing. So I'm going to be his headache for the next few months while I kind of get to grips with things here. So we've had this polytunnel here about a year now. We haven't really had time. I mean, thankfully he's been busy with his job, but we haven't really had time to give everything the TLC that it kind of deserves. So this weekend we've decided to come up. We're going to kind of give it all a bit of a clear out, make sure everything's kind of looking its best, get rid of things that maybe haven't had the TLC that they needed, and kind of go from there and kind of give it a bit of a reset. So I didn't know if you wanted to follow me on our journey, see how we get on.
Hello, so the plan is we've got the planting on both sides, and what we want to do is get everything a lot more uniform. So currently everything's in small little pots. If it's only a small plant, we've originally had it in a small pot so it can grow on. The problem we found is that the pots dry out really quickly in here because we get a lot of sun and it gets really hot. So the smaller the pot, the quicker it'll dry out. So what the plan is to get everything into these uniform 2-litre pots, and then we can keep everything in here hydrated to the same level and know every pot is staying well watered. We've already made a good start down here. We've got Nepetas and Alchemillas and Salvias, all that we've potted up last week into the right size pots, and then we just need to get those up here, get them hydrated, and eventually get them on the capillary matting that'll keep them soaked up, which we can talk about later. But we've also got Laura managed to grow these hostas from seed last year. We collected some seed from our garden last year, well, probably 2 years ago actually, and we sowed them last year and they all came up really well, and we let them grow on last year, but unfortunately even in a polytunnel we've been plagued by slugs and snails, and so I found a few weeks ago as they were coming through they were already getting quite heavily nibbled, as you can see, quite heavily nibbled already. So I thought if we could just freshly pot them up, a good tip is with slugs and snails, if you're not wanting to be too chemically orientated, is if you can just get on top of slugs and snails at the beginning of the season, get the first generation of them before they lay their eggs, you stop that cycle of being plagued by them all year. So I thought if we could re-pot them up, get rid of the old soil, and hopefully these pots will really start to bounce up through and we'll give them a good feed. But plan is get all these pots all up here and work our way along here. As I say, we've got these steepers that are in little small P9s, but we want to get those into some bigger pots. And likewise with the lavender now, that's sat dormant all winter, but it's really coming to life now. And the problem is we can't even keep this hydrated for a day in this size pot, and it'll really start to grow on. As you can see from these ones, these have got even bigger. So we want to get those into some good sized pots, and really grid everything out as well so that we know what we've got, you know, each type of plant in a nice regimented order, because we've got bits and pieces. We've got white Nepetas over there, but then we've got purple Nepeta up here. So get all those different types together so we know what we've actually got, and then have the sort of small delicate herbaceous on top where the height's a bit more reduced, and things that like a lot of sun, and then things that want a little bit more shade or don't like getting dried out quite so much, get those on this lower shelf. So we've got the pittosporums and things that don't want to get quite so frazzled, and skimmias and things, stuff that's good long-term shrubs but aren't quite big enough to go outside yet. Have those on the lower level, and they can have a bit more moisture as well from the ground. And we got even a few bits of veg for ourselves as well. We never really have time, but I didn't buy any time. But we always try, and we always buy some each year. So we've got a tomato F1 Honey Delight hybrid cocktail variety, a bright yellow fruits, regular winner in taste tests, prolific cropper. We've got melon, mini love, that comes out with little like small globe watermelons, because it's quite hard to do a large watermelon in this country, and you need a lot of water and things. But they brought out these little mini ones, so they're like little cannonballs watermelons. We've got another tumbler, tomato tumbler, so it'll be like nice long vines of cherry tomatoes. We've got, I think this is a pepper. This is a sweet pepper, baby bell cupid. I think that's an early, ideal for snacking, early cropper as well, hoping to try get sort of, because you never know what kind of summer we'll have, you see.
Last year it was really dry.
Yeah, and we have, you have a good spring, and then you think, oh, right, we'll have a good summer, but it's not always the case. So then the problem is you buy things or grow things in the spring thinking that the whole year is going to be like this, and then if it goes a bit mild all summer, you need those ones that are going to hit in early. Got a nice courgette, because everybody's got to have a courgette.
Yeah.
Of course, you get lots of fruit off just one of those. It's got good mildew resistance, which is good, because if we end up keeping this in the polytunnel, which you might put it outside, but if we keep it in the polytunnel, we've got quite hard water here, so that would increase your mildew, so it's good to have a good resistance to that. I'll keep this one for the last one, but then there's a aubergine there, little genie aubergine. Yeah, again, these come through as like little mini, more globe baby aubergines, because again, aubergines need a lot of heat, and if you're doing a traditional large fruiting crop, it can take too long before the fruit actually ripes, and then the summer's gone. So if you get one that's got smaller fruit, they'll ripen quicker before the end of summer, kind of thing. And you do like, it's good as an aubergine.
You like an aubergine.
You don't like aubergines, do you? But I like an aubergine. And then this one is a Nepeta as well, but it's specifically catnip Nepeta, so it's Nepeta cataria. So that's the specific. Yeah, and we end up in our cats, they love any Nepeta, and they'd run riot through all of the normal Nepeta, but this one's just is the particular catnip one, so it's extra sort of, the perfume just links with them the best. So I thought if I got one of those, I'll prick all these out soon and pot those up into individual cells, and then we can have a bit of a successive crop of sacrificial catnip. And I'm sure there'll be a clip at some point of a big fluffy cat rolling majestically through all of that later in the summer.
Not so majestic.
Not so majestic, no, that's true. But yeah, and then a lot of these like, for example, these are all salvaged. These are foxgloves. These have all been salvaged from, they're self-sown from a garden, and that they were going to waste. So we went and potted them up. They're only little tiny ones. All of those are just self-sown from outdoors, and we potted those up. And you just think,
Why go to waste?
Yeah, they'd all have gone to waste. They'd have all just gone in the bin, compost bin kind of thing. But if you've got the space kind of thing and the time and the patience, a lot of weed in there. And we need to. So that's the other thing. We need to pot things on, but we also need to really get all the weeds out, because again, unfortunately, over the winter, the only thing water does is feed the weeds. And we've got verbenas as well, like there. Now they're really hardy. They don't need a lot of love. They do need a little bit of love. And again, the problem with those is they're quite prolific rooters, and there just isn't enough soil in there for them to get going. So they are coming through, but again, they're drying out, and they're quite robust. But we could do with getting those out and splitting them up a bit, and probably putting a little bit of normal soil in as well, because that's the other thing. Everyone gets obsessed about using compost purely, but some things really don't appreciate just having complete compost. Well, either because it's too free draining, or it just doesn't have that solid structure that soil does for the roots to dig in. So they could probably do with a bit of a mix, but I've managed to get us some soil, so that's good. And these are salvaged hostas as well, actually. So we've got the ones we sowed ourselves, but these were salvaged from someone who didn't want them anymore. Hence why they were just sort of rushedly put into these pots. But lovely variegated hostas, really robust. You know, they come through early as well.
Someone will appreciate it.
Yeah, and I mean these, you could. That one's probably good to go. Needs a bit of weed as ever. That one you could probably split. This one definitely wants splitting down. So you know, there's 4 or 6 usable plants there. These are a lot of bits. It was a bit of a trial last year we did. I'm sure everyone always sees the Farmer Gracie orders where you can get stuff at, you know, heavily reduced bare root stock for sale on places like Farmer Gracie and other suppliers, and like at the end of the winter season they'll do big discounts on bare root stock for all sorts of herbaceous things. And so and they're good prices for the volume of plants you get, but we were interested to see sort of how successful those would be. And so we potted them up last year. We bought a load of stuff on discount and potted a lot of it up. And interestingly, you just find that actually your hit success is pretty sort of 50-50. I mean, there should be about 10 to a dozen sedums of different, I think 3 or 4 different varieties here. I think there's zero orange and things, or all sorts of different ones that were a bit nicer, come out with bright orange flower on this sort of purpley leaf. But what we found is actually a lot of them, just because they're bare root, they just never really activate the root stock. So you can have something come through like this. And what's quite good to know is people often think that they're not gonna, they've done something wrong. Well, these were all potted up the same way. You see, you got a little bit there, but that was potted up at the same time with the same medium from the same supplier, look, in the same place, growing conditions, in the same part of the world. It's had the same water, the same drought, everything, same feed, and that's just done that, and then that's done that. And a lot of them haven't done anything at all, so you find that just, and actually they've not been overwatered, so we've tried to bring them on a bit more now with a bit more moisture, but it just hasn't done it. And they were even planted in sort of half compost, half coir, so there's no waterlogging that should have gone place, but the roots either never made it, or they've sort of rotted off from that bare root. So I think you've got to be careful with the kind of bare root stuff when you get it. But it was a good trial, but it is very 50-50. Bit more successful with the geraniums that we got, some different geraniums and things. So we just need to go through and really pick through a lot of these. And so on this side, it's quite similar to the other side, but we've got a bit of all sorts really actually on. And to start with, these are a bit of a personal favourite of mine, just a bit quirky and a bit different, and I always like things that are a bit off the beaten track. These are in a very sort of temporary emergency. This isn't how you should sort of plant them or anything, but needs must when time's short. So these are a mix of something called Eremurus, and they're Himalayan bulb effectively, and they come up through the common names, foxtail lily, and they look like really grand sort of fox gloves really. And they come from various heights. You can get little short ones that are just sort of 1/2 metre to ones that are 2 metres plus, and you get whites, purples, pinks, orange, and in fact one of them is already putting its flower stalk on. Now that's fairly short, is that, but if that was in the ground, that one I would imagine it would be about 2 metres.
That's short because it's not in much.
Yeah, we've just temporarily, because we've never had enough time, is to activate them. They're very similar to, you can have them in the garden permanently, the best in the garden permanently, and they are hardy with the frost and things, with them being from the Himalayas and things. They will tolerate a good cold temperature. The one issue you have is as they come through in spring, they've got a little bit like a sort of the top of an onion kind of thing, the big sort of green bulbous shoot that comes through. Deer and rabbit love to nibble those in the spring.
Because they're soft.
yeah, because it's very, very similar to asparagus. So it comes through like asparagus, and so that's a really juicy, green, luscious growth, and it's just prime eatings for deer and rabbit. So the problem is, it's the only downside of us being sort of neighbouring a farm, is that we get a lot of deer coming through here and the big rabbits and everything. So if I have them outside, the dream is to have them outside. We had them out last year and we caged them off so that the wildlife couldn't get to them, but we had to do some rejigging and we've never had time to get them back in the ground. So we wanted to activate them with soil now, but it has stunted their growth. So we'll probably get flowers. I'd like to plant them out. There's still time to plant them out, but this is all part of the big push in the polytunnel. So in the long run, these need to come out, but it's nice to see that they're coming through, because it's a bit like dahlias. You never quite know which ones have survived over the winter. Speaking of wildlife and animals, these are common name lamb's ears, and these are actually related to potato, you know, the eating potato and things, but this is lamb's ears, and so these come up with a nice purple flower in high summer. Really prolific growers, so you can put a tiny piece. We actually took cuttings of these from a garden that had a really big clump. We just took lots of cuttings and just put them into the pots, and over the winter they've just all come up. Bit more alchemilla here. Some nice brunneras that we got. They struggled a little bit last year, because again, this is one that can get a bit plagued by disease. But a cracking variety, really big leaves, that lovely silver veiny foliage. And the lovely popper blue, which you don't get a lot of blue in spring, so it's really nice. So they're a really cracking spring plant. We've got some bits of bedding from sort of last year, sort of perennial bedding, but you can put them into pots really nicely, or put them in shrub beds. But yeah, lots of all sorts of bits and pieces. Got some poppies in here. Penstemons, all sorts of good flowering bits. So some not anemones. Peonies. There, well done. So again, I think these were salvaged ones. That's the other joy, is because they're salvaged, I have no idea what colour they are, because when they were salvaged they weren't in flower. So we don't know what colour they are or what they are, but they've come through really well. So they just need a bit of TLC, bit more soil and a bit of a feed. We put a bit of a granular feed in the other week, but we just need to get on that, probably with a liquid feed as well. And there's even some baby alliums which are already coming through. You'll find that's the scorching on the leaves. One, that's because they're in a pot, so they're a bit limited on how much they can establish root wise, but also because it gets too hot for an allium in here. So I've already got a tray of alliums that we sowed, again as a bit of an emergency one, and I've put those outside, because in these sunny temperatures we could do with those actually being in a bit shadier, cooler climes kind of thing. But they're doing it, and as long as they green up each year, that's the main thing. And then the other geraniums and a random Nepeta. So again, this is what the big push is for: get everything into the same size pots, so we can hydrate them more efficiently, and then get all those varieties together, get it all nicely organised, so when you walk in you know how many of each type of plant you've got, and then crucially just keeping them alive and keeping them well watered.
Laura wants to grow some seeds.
Oh no, yeah, that's true, and we've got to somehow fit in some seed sowing into today as well, because I think we've got about 50 packets of seed that we're wanting to sow.
So it's my job to go through all these pots and just make sure that everything's weeded. Anything that's kind of has dead foliage or dead sticks, stems, make sure they're cut off. As you can see on some of these, well, quite a lot of these pots, they've all got labels on, but that's just because we're reusing pots that we've got from the garden centre or the nurseries where we bought them. So this says phlox, but This is a... What is this? Foxglove. You literally told me like 2 seconds ago. This is a foxglove and not a phlox. So I just need to peel off all the labels as well and just make sure that they're not saying the wrong thing.
Potting things up, like we said, anything that's too small, these little P9s, these foxgloves that we've done have just, over winter, just become completely root bound. So really thirsty, energetic plants. So we want to get those into a slightly bigger pot, hold a bit more moisture and get them to the size that they can start flowering at a time of the year when we want them to. So I'm just nearing the end of those, and then we only want 1 foxglove per pot, of course, as well, so that we can have that typical singular flower stalk, because we've got a few in a big pot here where there's about 4 or 5 foxgloves in there, and so that would just become noisy and they'll all compete with each other and be a little bit diminished. So we want just 1 foxglove per pot, just like this. And Laura will be telling me off because I'm not taking the labels off. So I'll have to go back and do those. But yeah, simply just good active time of the year. You don't need to worry too much about teasing the roots or anything. And I'm not using bust pots, which I keep using that one. So just a little bit of compost in the bottom, hold it in there, fill them up. And we can be quite rough and ready with this, because as long as they've got the conditions they want, they'll be happier than everything being perfect. It's about getting everything done, as long as everything's in new, a bit of new compost. There we go. So from that to that, you can see they look a lot happier, and they've crucially got a bit more. You can see how well, that's good. They're rooting down into the matting that we've put on the bottom.
That gets wet.
And that holds moisture, although not enough. So that's one of our other projects for in the future. But yeah, we want it to get going in the pot and not rely on the roots that it's set to the bottom. You see, that's really dense. And while we're here as well, we can just get rid of that bit of moss and any little dead leaves, because it's all wasted energy trying to maintain those old tired leaves. We just want them to focus on this year's fresh, because a lot of those yellowing leaves on a foxglove will be from last year. It's sort of because they germinate the year before, and then they need sort of 6 months to get established, and then they'll flower the following spring. But you want to get rid of those old leaves from the sort of the year before. So I'm all done with the singular ones. Now I've got the painful task of all these little clustered ones, which originally were too small to even go in a small pot on their own, or even as 2 or 3. So there was just little clusters of 4 or 5 or so. But now they're all got well established over the winter and things. We've now got 3, and you'll just end up with 3 unsuccessful foxgloves if we keep them. So we'd rather have 3 independent that do really well.
1, 2,
3. You see, there's like a hierarchy of, because this one's got the biggest root stock, and then it goes down, you see, so that'll always be that'll take the most the nutrients, followed by that one, and so then that'll just go to waste really. But whilst they're also trying to hold on, they'll diminish this one a little bit, so even this one, even though it's doing the best, won't be the best it could be, because we'd be better off having those separate. So we don't need to be too precious about it, and just go in and just make a few. sort of key incisions, and then a gentle tease. We got one, and then a gentle tease. You got two. So then you got the one, the two, and the three. And then we could possibly, I might pot that one up in just a little one so it can come on a little bit more and keep that elsewhere. But these ones are probably good enough to then go straight on in to a 2 litre pot and join the others.
I feel like we've done a really good job today. We've managed to repot everything that needs putting in the bigger pots, take all the labels off, get rid of all the weeds, and it's all starting to look really nice now. Everything looks a lot better. We've got a sacrificial catnip to take home to Annie and Lou. Oh God, the sprinklers!